Okay, for this bowl, pepper bowl, what I've done is transfer my pattern onto tissue with a pencil, and then I took a Sharpie ultrafine marker and transferred it to my piece. You can also use the Statler Tri Plus Fine Liner. Okay, either one of those work. So I've transferred, you just trace over your pencil line, it bleeds through the tissue and transfers to the piece. So I'm going to do a background on this, my watercolor background. And I'm going to use, this is number 626, yellow green. Okay, so I'm going to do a watercolor background behind the peppers. So always shake your product well. And then you're going to put some color out in a paint well. And you're also going to take and put water, and I've got some clean water here, into another well to create your wash. When you're making a wash, you always want to start with water, add color to it. Okay, for the background of this bowl, I'm going to use CS 626 yellow green color stroke, and then I've got a well with water in it, and I've taken 2 healthy scoops of color and mixed it into this. And I'm going to show you on the back here. We do what I call slip slap mush mush. So now, could you have you could have put a pattern on the back if you wanted also, but I thought my recorder was on when I was doing the background on the front, and it wasn't. So here we go. So slip slap, constantly changing the direction of the brush so that you don't get little rabbit tracks or constant pattern to your slip slap. You want to constantly move. If it starts to run and drip, grab those so that you don't have a drip mark. You are on a curved surface here. Constantly stirring that wash up. The color is heavier than water. It falls to the bottom. So keep that stirred up as you're using it. And just constantly turn the brush. So my brush is not coming off the piece. I'm not doing this. I'm bouncing it around on the piece. I don't come off of the surface until I go pick up more product. Okay. And then I may band some colors on the back of this. We'll see. Okay, so you get an idea on how to do that background. And I went around the peppers. I did not go over them. Okay, you see that? I'm going to get some more water. So clean water. 2 healthy scoops of my 626 yellow green. There's one. There's another. Keep it stirred up. That color will fall to the bottom of your well. So every time you load, stir, give it a good stir. It's something you don't think about, and then you wonder when you get down to the bottom of your little well, you've got a whole bunch of color there. It's because it all fell to the bottom and you didn't keep it stirred up. Okay, so you can layer colors like this too. You can put it, you can do it randomly. Put some in one area, another color in another area, and I've done that before, and create multicolor that you can see it's just a watercolory background. Now if you get an area, we'll just pretend that that one is too heavy. It looks heavier than it is on the camera. Just clean your brush with water and come back and bounce the color, do that same slip slap motion in that area, and it disperses what's there. Okay, and then we'll add some to the inside of this foot. You don't want it on the foot of the piece. This has Color Strokes does have a little bit of glaze in it, so it could stick to your shelf. So keep it off of the foot of your piece. Okay, so that's what I did in the background behind the peppers. Okay, so what I'm doing is applying multiple coats of color strokes to these peppers. So the yellow ones are CS624. I'm using the medium sumi brush to do my application, and I'm following the direction or the shape of that pepper. And I'm applying 3 coats to the yellow and to the orange. The red ones I do with 2 coats of 610 red, and then 2 coats of 612 red alert. And the reason for that is because it's cheaper. The 610 red is much cheaper than the 612. So to save on money, that's the reason I put 2 coats of the brown red underneath, and then the other red that is higher priced and a little more translucent, I put it on top, and that helps it make it look like it's opaque. So nice and smooth application. Try to do long fluid strokes. You'll see less brush strokes. And try to use the largest brush possible in the area when you're working on anything. Okay. So we'll go back. I'm ready for another coat of the red. I've already done 3 of the yellow. So go from one direction, and then I create that point or tail coming from the other direction. It has a nice round tip on this sumi brush and helps me. You may want them more pointed, but this shows you how you can use the brush to achieve that look. Okay, so I will let these dry, and then we are going to shade on top of them. Okay, so we're going to shade the yellow peppers, and I've still got some of my yellow base coat, which was the 624 butterscotch, and I've taken out a little bit of CC125 curry. Sorry, my labels are very well used, the bottles. I'm going to use the small sumi brush now, and I'm going to load that yellow into my brush. Don't need a whole lot of it. And then I'm just going to pull down the side of this, and that needs to be stirred up a little bit. Let's get the water out of there. Put the yellow back in, kind of wipe out some of it, and this kind of side load, so you're just catching one side of that color. And I'm going to keep that darker color to the outside of my pepper and just go down the one side. You could do more, but I'm just going to do one, and I'm going to kind of walk it, what I call walk it in a little bit, so where it comes back inside that pepper and not just along the outside. I'm going to add some more of that original, drag through the dark, and I'm keeping the dark to the inside. So now I have to turn my brush over to keep this on the inside. Add a little bit more. Blending that in. Okay, so you can see there's a darker edge on those. Okay, on the orange ones, you can use red as your highlight, or you could use, yeah, the red is probably better. So I'm going to pull out the Color Concentrate 112 red. Put it out. Turn this around. And I'm going to put the orange in my brush. And I switched to the smaller sumi so that it was a little more controllable, so that you didn't have to maneuver that large brush. Okay. All right, so that gives you a rinse, blot out the moisture so that I don't have a whole bunch of water in there. Okay. Put the orange back in my brush, side load with that red generously, and pull down. If you like to float color with a square shader, you could do that too. You don't have to use the sumi. I'm just showing you how to do it with this brush so that it'll eliminate you having to buy multiple brushes. Rinse, blot out, that orange back in there, side load again, and I'm pressing all the way down on the brush so that that color is bleeding across into the orange. Alright, I got outside the line just a little bit, so I'm going to rinse my brush with water and just push it back inside so you can see how those have shadows. Now, we can also put a highlight on the orange one with some yellow on that side. And I went back to the 624 Butterscotch. I'm going to put the orange in my brush. And I'm just going to kind of grab one side with the yellow and then turn it to make sure that yellow is on the outside. Remember, you've got just the orange that's already on there on your brush, so you don't have to worry about it changing anything. All right, so on the red ones, I'm going to do 132 deep cranberry. Now the pinks and the cranberries tend to burn out, so I'm in hopes with it being on top of the red. You could use a brown also, that this will hold. I'm hoping it will. You could even just take that red that we shaded on the orange ones. You could, let's do that. We'll just add more red on top of that to intensify it. Some more of this red. You can even add just a smidge of black to the red. I mean, there's all different. You just need a darker color. Okay, so I got outside the line. The nice thing about the color strokes is they have enough glaze in them that I can come out here and I can shimmy it back and forth and push it and tell it to get back. You can also use like a square shader where it's got a chisel edge, and you can shimmy it back too. That works. If the other one doesn't. Another little trick, yellows eat red. So on these we can put just a little stroke for a highlight, and it should soften it. So we can take our Sumi brush and let's go back to that 624 yellow. And I'm just going to add just a little highlight mark, a little comma stroke. And this brush is not necessarily made for a comma stroke, but it does allow us to do a lazy comma, you could say. And I'm putting it on the highlight side. You wouldn't put it on the yellow ones because you've already got that on there. So I think you can see those. Okay. That's pretty simple so far. All right, then we're going to do the calyx, or the top. And you will need a round brush to do that with. I'm going to use the Colors for Earth 5000, 5000 number 2 round. I'm going to use 161 green leaf and 162 laurel green. The laurel is usually thicker, so I take the handle of my brush, dip it in my water bowl, come over and just stir that one dot of water into that, just because when you're double loading a brush, if the colors are not the same consistency, you're not going to get a good load. Always wet your brush first, blot on your paper towel, and then I'll show you on paper what we're going to do. We're going to fully load, shampoo that brush with the lighter green, work it into the bristles, but kind of taper it off so you get that point, okay? Let's come in a little bit closer. And then I'm going to tip it into the dark. So I have very little dark on there. And then I'm going to start where the stem grows. So I'm going to start on the fat part, pull, pull, and lift to a point. So fully loading the light, tip in the dark. I'm going to start up here where the stem is. I'm going to press down to fan out the brush the width I want it. Start pulling, 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 and then lift to a point. And when I lift, I'm slightly turning just ever so little to kind of gather all those bristles back to a point. So fully load with the light, tip in the dark. Press down to get the width or the size you want. Pull, pull, lift, 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 lift to a point as you're turning. So press, pull, and lift. Press, pull, and lift. Now these are larger than we're going to need, but a lot of times it's easier to practice large and then go to small. Okay, so every time I'm not rinsing my brush, I'm just fully loading and tipping. So I'm going to start where the stem is here, okay? And I'm going to press, pull, and lift to a point. Fully load, tip, press, pull, and lift to a point. I'm just going to tip on this one and lift to a point. Fully load in the light, tip in the dark, press, pull, and lift. Typically there would be 5 petals, so to speak. So 1 I usually pull down into whatever I'm painting, whether it's a strawberry, a pepper, whatever. And I find it easier to pull my strokes towards me. I do pull them away from myself, but until you get that stroke down, I would recommend that you pull it towards you. Constantly reloading for each one, and the reason we do that is so that you'll get the same color value on those areas. Now because this one's clear up here on the side, I am going to push away from myself. It's going to be easier for me to do it that way. Turn. Fully load. Light green, tip and dart. Press, pull, lift. So press, pull, and lift. I'll come back with the liner and do my stem portion. Okay, so let's go over to this one. So press, pull, and lift. Retip, because I've got enough light green. Press, pull, and lift. Curve them different directions. Press, pull, lift. Press, pull, lift. Press, pull, lift. Fully load, tip. Be very light with the tipping on that dark color. It's an extremely strong color, and I've got enough in my palette for a whole classroom. But I wanted you to be able to see what I'm doing. And depending on what size, you can take the pattern and you can reduce it or enlarge it. So the brush, again, use the largest brush possible in the area. So if you enlarge it, you may use a larger round. Okay, we got one more. Repetition is how we learn. So a lot of times when I design something, I do it multiple times on a piece, because time you're done, you should have that down pat. There is a method to my madness. And that's just what I found over the years teaching for the last 30 some years. All right, rinse that brush, wipe it on that paper towel to make sure you've got all that color out before you go into something else. Okay, then we're going to take the liner brush, and I like using the 3600. Get the camera to focus. There we go. 3600 number 2. Again, wet your brush, blot, and then I'm going to take some of that green, both greens, and kind of make a different shade. Still dark. And then pull your brush through it. Load it, load it, load it, load it. And that also makes a point on your brush. Okay, so we can just start that at your stem area, and you can see I didn't have enough on there. And curl it around. So I'm starting, let me get the paper again. When you start the stroke, a brush stroke is, I'm going to turn it sideways, a combination of color, pressure, and motion. So the amount of pressure that you put down will be how fat it is, and when you come off on the pressure, you get thin. So I'm starting thicker at those calyx, and then I'm coming off the brush thinner, where I don't have as much pressure on it. Okay, so press, pull, and lift. Now, a fun thing to do is you can go in and just put some curls in the background if you wanted. So if you wanted them green, you could do that. You could take the red and add red ones if you wanted. I think I want to pull out more of the red. I'm going to get the 112 candy apple. We had some out here. Add a little bit more. And make sure you load that brush. So I could come out here and just do little curls. Make sure you do them in different directions. Don't have them going all the same way. You could do them with multiple colors if you wanted. This is just a, trying to think about the direction. Looking at the last one I did so that I'm not going in the same. Another element to your design. So the more pressure, the thicker the line you get. Let's go this way. And that one. Okay. So that's fun. So when this is dry, I could come around the back and maybe do some green and some red ones. Just to make it match. You wouldn't have to, but. Alright, so I am going to put some black. We're going to detail a little bit. Always shake, whether you're using the concentrates or the color strokes. I'm going to use CC 101 Cobalt Black. And I need to back off a little bit. Okay. Put some of that black out. So I heard it sputter, and it did. It got on my piece with the black. So I'm going to quickly, with just a clean brush, come in here and try to, I'm going to go back in that wash and just make sure I got some of that on there. That I didn't wash it off when I was doing it. Once again, you want to thin that black down before you start working. Okay, so constantly run your brush through it, pull it out, coat those hairs. You'll be able to go further. And only thin down one corner. You don't want to thin down the whole petal of the black, because if you do, it's going to evaporate before you use it. Okay, so don't try to do all of them at once. And I do my designs very loosey-goosey, so I'm just going to kind of hit and miss when I do this. Nothing fancy. That way, if you don't outline it completely and you have thick and thin lines, it doesn't necessarily make any difference. That's what I used to tell my students. If you make it irregular all over, then when you do make a mistake, nobody's going to know it because it's the same. Or they say when I shake too much, you know, same thing. Now on the small calyx, you noticed I did the center vein and one side. You don't want black on both sides because that is way too heavy of a black, and it would just stand out too much. So you just do one side and a center vein. I do the same thing when I do my strawberry caps. Okay. But see the difference in the two that are outlined and the ones that are not? And I'm just hitting and missing. You don't have to be perfect on this by any means. That's why I do it the way I do, so that, but remember, if you lay down heavier, more pressure, you're going to be thicker line, and less pressure will be a finer line. And I know I have to go back and do that one. I have to have it in the right position. So I just keep going with whatever I'm doing. But see how that's just loosey-goosey, I call it? And once again, pull your strokes towards you. It's much easier until you learn. So thick, thin, hit and miss. Doesn't have to be a solid. Add an accent stroke. You could add an accent stroke here at the bottom also. Okay, so now I've got this one. Press, lift, press down, thick and thin. And the accents are just to kind of show you the shape. It kind of emphasizes the shape of whatever you're working on. It could be anything. So this is a pretty simple design. So if you're a beginner, it would be great, because it's the hardest part is probably the top of the peppers. Turn it and make it comfortable for you. Okay, oops, I forgot that. So just double check to make sure you've got everything the same way. Okay. So there you go. Pretty simple. You could add dots if you wanted some green dots or yellow, whatever. I will, as soon as it dries enough, I will flip it over and do some of that on the back also with the red and probably the green. I'll just make some little curls. All right. The next thing that you can do would be the rim. And I use just a little turntable just to aid me in turning my piece, a little lazy Susan, however you want to refer to it. And I'm kind of liking the red. If you want to go generic, you could go green. But in my kitchen, I have green marbleized countertops, so I'm going to go red. And I am going with the 112 candy apple. This is a 1-inch foam brush. Okay. I'm just going to load that up. Both sides, work it into that sponge. Now this sponge, and this is an old one, it has the hard wood up in here, so you don't ever want to lay the brush on that area, and you've got it tapered. It looks like the roof of a house. See how it's tapered? You want to stay right in the middle, just on that tapered end. Okay, and let me see, let's change camera angles here. There you go, so you can see that. Okay, so let me move it over just a hair. So you're going to stay in the middle of it, and you're going to apply equal pressure, and you're going to just turn your piece. I'm going to flip the brush over, and you stay in the middle to achieve that band. You can do this on any shape of piece, guys. I don't care if it's a heart shape, an oval, a square, a triangle, octagon, it doesn't matter. The turntable is just to aid you in turning it, so you're not handling it, and so that you can apply an even amount of pressure. I have a little bit of a dip over here on this corner, so 2 coats, let it dry, go back around it a couple more. Remember, the color concentrates are a translucent underglaze, so I'm going to let that dry, and then I'll put a couple more on it, and it should be solid at that point. But the amount of pressure you put down will determine how far it curves over and over on your bowl. But if you stay right in the middle, see that? I'm staying right in the middle. Sometimes it depends on the shape of your piece. It may not be completely round. So take it just a little bit at a time until you make sure, because I've got an area over here that's a little off, but I can live with that. All right. And you could go further. You could band lines inside and all that kind of stuff with the banding wheel. But hopefully that helps you on doing different size pieces, different shapes. That's kind of a fun way to do it. I hope you like the project, and I look forward to seeing your creations. Happy painting.